Good morning, everybody. I'm Morton Blackwell, president of the Leadership Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our May Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast. We live in interesting times. People say things and aren't held accountable for them if you're a leftist. One of the most interesting things that happened is a couple of days ago, the president's White House spokesman announced or claimed that under President Biden, illegal immigration has been reduced 90%. I mean, what a brazen lie. But I haven't yet seen today's newspapers on this subject. Peter Doocy called her on it, but it's just astonishing that you can, with a straight face, say things that everybody knows is false. I encourage you to live tweet today's event. The hashtag is on the screen. This year, 2023, your Leadership Institute has already trained 4,832 conservatives at 268 separate programs. And since 1979, the Institute has trained over 261,000 activist students and leaders. You have before you our schedule for the upcoming schools. I ask you to take a moment to review these schools and consider attending one or sending a friend to the training. If you are watching online, visit our website at leadershipinstitute.org/training to see the upcoming online and in-person training. It's my pleasure now to introduce Sarah Stewart for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Sarah is the grassroots administrator at the Leadership Institute. She graduated from Liberty University with her Master of Divinity in the development of Christian thought, and she graduated in 2020. She's proud to be from St. Mary's, West Virginia. Sarah worked in West Virginia as a substitute teacher for 3 years before moving to Arlington to work for the Leadership Institute. Sarah, would you step up?
You'll bow your heads, we'll begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together and the many blessings that you've given us. We'll retry that. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together and the many blessings that you've given us. I thank you for Mr. Vigory and pray that you would be with him as he speaks. And most of all, I thank you for Christ, whose death and resurrection has opened to us the gift of eternal life. In his name, amen.
Amen.
And if you'll please stand, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Stephen Rowe, who will give a brief programs report. Stephen Rowe is the Director of Digital Training at the Leadership Institute, where he trains thousands of people on digital and political technology every year. Stephen has trained more than 18,000 activists and has been listed in multiple 30 under 30 awards. His work has been featured on Fox News, Fox Business, The Daily Caller, The Washington Times, and many more outlets. Stephen grew up in Montana, the Treasure State, and he is one of our most popular lecturers. It's my pleasure to have Stephen step up here.
Thank you so much, Morton. And hello, everybody. So I actually just hit 30 this year, so if anybody knows any 40 under 40 awards, we'll go ahead and start reaching out for those. But good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I want to share with you today about something that can make a huge impact in the public policy process, and that's Leadership Institute's on-demand training. You know it, you love it, and if you don't know about it, I'd love to share a few words with you today. Thanks to Morton's leadership since 1979, the Leadership Institute has been providing top-notch training to conservatives in the public policy process, training them how to win. And now, with on-demand training, you can access that training at a time and place most convenient to you. You can learn at your own pace, and you'll be joining a network of over 12,000 conservative activists who are already using the platform. Just this past month, we've crossed that 12,000 number of people taking on-demand training from Leadership Institute. So whether you're planning to run for office, work on a campaign, or simply want to become a more effective activist for your conservative values, this on-demand training platform is a great resource for you. But it's not just about the training. It's also about the community that you're going to be joining. You'll have the opportunity to connect with fellow leaders and passionate activists from diverse backgrounds, share ideas, learn how to win, seek advice, seek win-win scenarios, and ultimately engage in meaningful discussions. So I encourage you all to take advantage of this opportunity to access on-demand training. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey with activism, LI's on-demand training can provide you with the valuable resources, support, and opportunity for growth. And it really is a great platform. Now, if you use the code, which is the hashtag on the screen, WWCB, at checkout, all courses are immediately 50% off. And so really encourage you to take advantage of it. Really, it's conservatives that are going to win the day as we look forward to the end of this year in November in 2024. And well-trained activists are what will make us far more effective and deliver greater results. So whether it's you, whether it's a friend, make sure that we're getting the training that we need to be successful. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Matthew Hurt is the Director of Professional Services here, where he oversees Leadership Institute's internship program, our career trainings, and conservativejobs.com, which is Leadership Institute's free online job platform. Matthew first joined us at the Leadership Institute in 2009 as a campus leadership program regional field coordinator and has been an indispensable member of the Institute family ever since. He's very engaged in grassroots conservative organizers in Northern Virginia and across the country. And currently, he is the chairman of the Arlington County Republican Committee. He's going to introduce our speaker, whom I put the tag on years ago. I've had an opportunity to introduce him, and I refer to our speaker as the funding father of the conservative movement, and that stuck, and it is certainly warranted. So I asked Matthew Hurt to step up here and give the introduction to our speaker.
Great. Thank you, Morton. So we're going to move this lectern. See it. This is scripted. I will accept your condolences for being the chairman of the Arlington County Republican Committee, where 80% of my neighbors living and dead voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Is it me?
Maybe a loose connection to the wire.
Could be. Is it mine? I can switch to a. You want me to switch? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna switch to
We'll do it live, as the famous Bill O'Reilly said. We'll do it live, and I'll give you that, and I'll be right here. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to do this as a conversation with Richard Viguerie. So Richard A. Viguerie pioneered the use, as you've heard, of political direct mail and direct marketing. He transformed American politics in the 1960s and 1970s by pioneering the use of direct mail in the political and ideological sphere. which allowed conservatives to go around the liberal media blockade right into people's homes. For all of you who remember Walter Cronkite, Richard Viguerie went straight past all of that stuff on your 6 and 10, right into the homes of millions of Americans, patriotic Americans. He used direct mail marketing to help build the conservative movement, which then elected, as you may recall, Ronald Reagan as the first conservative president of the modern era. Viguerie is the chairman of American Target Advertising, a 57-year-old direct marketing agency with 83 team members located here in Northern Virginia. There are conservatives in Northern Virginia. Sometimes they vote, and sometimes they run for office, Rick. With 83 team members here in Northern Virginia. Viguerie's company has mailed more than 4.6 billion letters for hundreds of principled conservative candidates and organizations and raised more than $7.5 billion for conservative causes. They mailed over 139 million postal letters in 2020 alone. Viguerie is also the chairman of Fed Up PAC. Fed Up PAC is an independent expenditure political action committee, and he's the publisher of a conservative website, conservativehq.com. I encourage you to check that out. There's daily updates from great writers, including Richard himself. Dr. Lee Edwards, a friend of many in this room, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, wrote in the Washington Times in 1999 that Viguerie was one of the 13 conservatives of the century. Mr. Viguerie and his wife, Elaine, have been married for 60 years. They have 3 children and 6 grandchildren and live in the Virginia countryside on 230 conservative-friendly acres. He is also the author of a number of books, including Go Big, which if you don't have already in your library, we can get for you today or later. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Richard Viguerie to the stage. At the end of my questions, which I have here, at the end of my questions, we will take questions from the audience. I do ask that you wait until the microphone has been delivered to somewhere near your face. And because all of our friends in TV land are watching online, and of course, this is such an important conversation to have with you, Richard, that we want to make sure that everyone hears your lovely questions and is able to see this in the future, both at leadershipinstitute.org and beyond. So my first question for you, and do we have, am I sharing the microphone with Richard, or is he mic'd up? You're mic'd up. Your lav works. Great. All right, so my first question for you, and just a little bit of context. I'm a recovering direct mail copywriter. For 4 years, I wrote for Response America in Old Town, Chip Gately, Chip Lowry, and Patrick Mooney. And one time back in, I think, 2014 or 2015, we had a direct mail fundraising school, which are hosted by Kirsten Holmberg, here our Director of Political and Fundraising Training. She does excellent work. And you gave a lecture that was the basics of direct mail fundraising, and then I spoke after you about the extra fundraising, direct mail techniques and tactics. And it was just an honor to not only sit through your presentation, but then build on what you have, what you spoke about to the audience and what you've built in the conservative movement. So my first question is, tell me about the conservative movement when you became politically active. What was the landscape like, and who were the key players when you became involved in politics?
Thank you, Matthew. You mentioned that you started in direct mail. At my tender age of 89, I'm a groupie about one person, and Molly Hemingway, as you all know her from Fox. And so I'm sitting at a dinner a few years ago, and I'm talking to someone from the Federalist Society there, and they said, "You want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah, great, so let's go." And she was a few tables away. I didn't realize that. And so we walk over there, and she said, it's a very nice thing to me. She said, "Nice to see you again." Really? When had we met before? She got her start right here at Leadership Institute in the direct mail department, and where she met her husband, Mark, right here. So direct mail is a great entree to a lot of wonderful things in life. The conservative movement, I'm 13, 14 years old, playing cops and robbers and the kids in the neighborhood. I'm not telling anybody. I'm not shooting robbers. I'm shooting commies. I just came into this world knowing that it was bad people. And then I go on to get active in the Young Republicans. And in 1961, I can hear the guns going off in Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., and I was desperate to join the battle, okay? And long story, I'll make it short. I got a chance to interview for a job at running Young Americans for Freedom. So I took that job in the summer of 61. And there were just a handful of us there. I mean, just I'm second generation conservative. First generation, Bill Buckley, Frank Meyer, Bozell, Russell Kirk, etc. And so I decided I'm going to try to beat Russell Kirk. I'm going to beat Bill Buckley. So I started reading and studying what I thought they were reading. And after about a year and a half, I came to a conscious decision. I'm not making a lot of progress here. I didn't go to Yale, University of Houston, etc. So I made a conscious decision to focus on marketing. Well, we didn't have enough debaters, candidates, elected officials. We had some. We didn't have anybody that could market them in those days. In those days, it was like biblical proportions of darkness. There were time after Goldwater's loss in '64 that you almost felt like the plagues were coming and the locusts and the flies and the boils, and it was just really, really dark. We had nothing going for it. We had no direct mail, no Ronald Reagan really as a candidate out there, no Fox, no Rush Limbaugh, no nothing. And so, but we picked ourselves up and we moved forward. And it's discouraging these days and all, but in those days it was far, far worse. We had very little to look forward to, but we got a great opportunity here in front of us here. Who the players were Bill Buckley. Bill Buckley was at that time 34, 35 years old, 10 feet tall, though. He was just almost a small little god to the conservatives out there at his young age. And there's so many unsung heroes from that period. And one of them was Bill Rusher, who was for 35 years publisher of National Review. Again, just a great giant under the radar. Cliff White, who put together the draft Goldwater committee, Brent Bozell, who was a roommate of Bill Buckley's and probably just about that much smarter than Buckley, just brilliant. And we all knew each other. We all interacted. We'd go to receptions and dinners together, and it was just a small little group, and everybody knew everybody else there. And the Republican Party was not a conservative party in those days. It was a party run by Nixon and Rockefeller, and we were just a remnant, just a handful of us out there and all. But we were convinced we were going to prevail. We were convinced the future was ours, and we all appointed ourselves. Nobody selected us to be leaders. Everybody stepped up and rushed to the sound of the guns wherever they felt there was a need.
And I don't want to get ahead of myself for these questions, but there's really an excellent amount of wisdom there at the end. Is nobody asked you to stand up and say, advance your conservative principles across the country. You did it because you knew it was right. As you said, the communists were a serious threat and are still a serious threat today. And you said, we've got to do something to save this country. We've got to do something to advance what has made America great in the past at such a young age. And with William F. Buckley and that cadre of thinkers and writers is so critically important. My next question, what drew you? So now this is post Sharon's statement and YAF and all of these great thinkers and organizers. What drew you to the concept of fundraising through the mail, and who were some early adopters of this experiment that you engaged in and pioneered?
As I said, I've tried to beat Bill Buckley for a year and a half, but it didn't work out. I was running Young Americans for Freedom as executive secretary, and I went to the board and I asked to be relieved of all duties in the organization except direct mail. I wanted to focus on that. And after a year and a half, I had a wife and a baby, and I went to my wife and I literally had this conversation with her. I said, honey, I think I've got something here that's going to change America, maybe even the world. This is really, really important, but I don't know it. I don't understand it. I need to do a deep dive study on it. could I be relieved of all household duties? No diapers, no trash, yard work. She bought into it, hook, line, and sinker.
I might get back into direct mail.
Can
I get out of all of the responsibilities of the house? And so talk more about that. Talk about just at YAF you've explored this opportunity and what happened next?
Well, I did, after a year and a half, I focused on direct mail. And then after a year and a half of that, it's now late 1964, and Goldwater goes down to a big defeat. And so I leave YAF and started my own agency. I had one client. That was YAF, and I lost them after 5 weeks. It's a youth organization. Every week or two, there'd be a coup. Somebody would be throwing somebody else off the board or whatever. And so I never looked back. I just, had great confidence, and I got this client and that client. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about marketing. Of course, I knew nothing, nothing compared to what I know now. But there was one thing that I did have, and that was in the summer of '64. And this changed the conservative movement to a large extent. I discovered that if you were running for president, you had to file with the clerk of the House of Representatives all your $50 plus donors. I went down there one day, and there's a big stack of Barry Goldwater donors. So I started copying, came back the next day, wrote more. I saw I wasn't making a lot of progress here. I hired 6 women out of my own pocket to get 12,500 Goldwater names. And so then I decided I could go out, because that was, I thought I knew everything, but I knew I didn't have any names and addresses, and that's the name of the game. And so I, with those 12,500 names, I went out and started my company. And I've had, there's not that many organizations, a handful of them out there. I went to all of the conservative organizations out there nationally and asked them to do test mailings. Every one of them agreed to do 5,000 tests. And invariably the test results came back, we spent $1 and brought back $2, $3, $4, $5. Spectacular results. Nobody doing that. Nobody was in the mail there. Then I would go to them and say, okay, now I need to mail 50,000. And then when those results come in at the same rate, we'll do 500,000, et cetera, and build a big mailing list. Every one of them said, no, we just want to do another 5,000. I said, no, the barbarians, I can see them. They're down the street. They're going to be here. We got to blow and go. We got to do, and none of them wanted to do it. So I made a conscious decision of something I think it really impacted the conservative movement. Said, tell you what I'll do. I'll take the risk. I'll put up all the money. And to this day, we still operate that way.
And nobody at that time was willing to go big. And anybody who's worked in direct mail knows you test. And at this level,
Yep.
It was 5,000, and back when I was doing it, we would test at 25 or 50,000, and then you'd roll it out to a quarter
Right.
million or $500,000. That is absolutely fascinating to see. And you think about National Review and other subscription offers. Who can you mail and who would you
Yep.
send that message to? And outside of your 12,500 from the clerk of the clerk here, where would you find other names? Who else would?
Good question, Matthew. So I said, if you have to file with the clerk of the House in Washington, D.C., if you're running for president, I wonder if you have to do that in Albany, in Springfield, in Austin, in Sacramento. Sure enough, you did. And by the end of the year, I had 100,000 donors.
As a list hoarder, in Virginia, sometimes conservatives nominate by convention, and one of the things that you get is a name, address, email address, and phone number. And I am a voracious list hoarder when it comes to identifying conservatives and then communicating with them. So you've launched this company. It's in the years after the Goldwater campaign. Tell us a little bit about, and of course the gentleman of the hour here is always Morton Blackwell. Tell us a little bit about your introduction to Morton and how that relationship developed through direct mail efforts.
Okay. You referenced Lee Edwards earlier. Lee is a dear friend and just recently retired from Heritage Foundation. And Lee is known in the conservative movement as 001. Means he's been active at the national level longer than every living conservative. The Goldwater, Buckley, Falwell, they're all dead, and so Lee is 001, I'm 002. So we get a lot of fun out of that. But anyway, what is it, 1973, Morton? 72. Lee says, hey, do you know this Morton Blackwell at AEI? And I said, no. And so he decided to put a lunch together at the Mayflower Hotel with myself, Lee, and Morton. And so we have a nice lunch in Mayflower. There are just the three of us. And I was so impressed with Morton that I called him up and asked him to come back for lunch about 10 days later. And we did. And at the end of the lunch, I told him that I wanted, he said I spoke magic words to him at the end of the lunch. And the magic words were, and I said to him, Morton, I want you to come work with me and help me build the conservative movement. And he said at that point he would have taken a pay cut. I just gave him a little bit of a pay increase, though. And we were off to the races then.
And we look, you look back at this, and of course Morton can look back at this in 1972 and say, we're looking to build a conservative movement. And as we go through, I have more questions, but look at what has happened in the years since, and what Dr. Fulner and Dr. Edwards and you and Morton and Mr. Bozell and so many others have done to build out an operation, not only here in the country to save us from the communists, but also across the globe. This conservative movement is truly global. So in Go Big, obviously the book that you can get here today or online, you talk about your inspiration behind the 4 horsemen of marketing. And I've seen this book, and any of you who know Kevin Gentry and others in fundraising and direct mail know this is critically important. Position, differentiation, benefit, and brand. Share with us examples of organizations who are capitalizing on this process, what you've seen, and how you built out this 4 horsemen of marketing.
All right. Let me just say before I answer that very important question, that starting around 1975, about 8-10 of us would meet for breakfast. So Morton must have got the idea from me because we would meet every Wednesday morning. Fulner, Wyrick, Howard Phillips, Terry Dolan, Ron Godwin, moral majority, for 2 hours, 7:30 to 9:30, and we'd plot and plan to the extent there was anything that could be called Hillary Clinton's vast right-wing conspiracy. That would have been it there. But we met every Wednesday morning starting in 1975. But in terms of the 4 horsemen, I'm at my tender age of 89 now. I literally spend 2 to 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, studying 2 things: marketing and business. Because I didn't go to school to learn either one of those, okay? And many of us, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, you probably, as you go through your career, you won't have studied in college what you're now making your living doing there. So you need to, young people out there, study, read. Briefly, and very little unique about the 4 horsemen. I say to your audience, you've got to get this right. If you get all 4 right to your audience, life is downhill, the wind to your back. Get one of them wrong, you're going uphill, you're not likely to succeed. Position is nothing more than a hole, H-O-L-E, hole in the marketplace. What hole in the marketplace you can occupy? It's a private decision you decide. I'd like to use the example of Rupert Murdoch. 35 years ago, he identified a niche market out there. Brilliant idea, brilliant. Nobody had ever identified this very niche market. Half of the country 35 years ago didn't have a TV channel to watch news on it. So he makes that private decision. Then position is what you do publicly to tell everybody about your hole in the marketplace. So he didn't go out there and say, we're a conservative network, we do this and that. He hired Megyn Kelly, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Fox and Friends, and Tucker, and Jesse, and Laura Ingraham, and all, etc. So that identifies who you are by your position there. That's public. And then benefit is obvious. You get news information you don't get anywhere else. 4th is brand. Brand is the ball game. That's everything. Products are not sold anymore. They're bought. People buy a brand product. And very few people in marketing understand what a brand is. The Origin of Brand, written by Al Reese and Laura Reese, is just a brilliant book if you're interested in marketing and communication. Maybe you don't care for marketing and communication, but anything in life, it helps you to understand a brand and identifies you that's different from everybody else. You want to be Seth Godin's purple cow. You want to be, I live out in the country, regularly pass fields of 40 brown cows here, 50 black and white ones there. Can't tell one from the other. If one of them is a purple cow. And so Leadership Institute, has a position, differentiation out there, benefits, and a brand. And there's no organization. Brand is very simply what makes you unique, different, and you own a category. I am I'm a brand. Morton's a brand, okay? Nobody does what Leadership Institute and Morton do here in the same way with my company in the way that we do it. So you want a raise, you want a promotion, you want a job, you want a spouse, you know, be a purple cow. You know, when I'm dating my girlfriend, now 61 years wife, I didn't realize at the time, but she was dating somebody else who ended up being chairman of ExxonMobil. You know, so I had to differentiate myself in a big way from all that competition out there.
Well, and such a great point, because, you know, and Stephen over here, who gave a programs report, and Chris in our careers division, and so many other of our program coordinators and trainers talk about branding, talk about what it is, you know, if you're trying to find a job in the conservative movement, or you want to make the case for your organization, or you're trying to advance public policy, you really have to carve out that niche, this position that you have, and then make the case through your communication, through the way that you organize, through the way that you know, what you can bring to the table. As we've, particularly at conservativejobs.com, a project of the Leadership Institute, we're identifying these young people who want to be conservatives. They talk about Barry Goldwater, they talk about William F. Buckley, and they're like, these are my intellectual heroes, and how do they go out and find an opportunity, say at American Target Advertising or here at Leadership Institute or beyond. So let's take a look back at the last 60 years of direct mail fundraising. How did direct mail help create the conservative movement, what we've talked about here in the last few minutes? What are some bright spots or stories or anecdotes that really stand out in your experience?
In my humble opinion, there would be no modern day conservative movement worthy of the name if it weren't for direct mail. Direct mail launched the conservative movement because you know, you have to think back 60 years ago. There was no, you know, Fox, no internet, nobody that other than Bill Buckley, maybe, you know, that was well known, Barry Goldwater. So we had no way to communicate with each other. We had no way to, you know, communicate. I remember when we learned that Bill Buckley might be in Richmond, we'd put together a caravan of 3-4 cars, drive down there for his speech and drive back. Literally, we'd do that. So that we had no way to communicate. And so direct mail, and we, you know, then and now, the major media was blocked from us. We didn't have access to it. So we went around that microphone, that blocking the microphone, right into people's homes. I can make a strong case that Ronald Reagan would have never been nominated for president without direct mail. In 1976 and 1980, Len Knopfsinger built for him a file of 250,000 small dollar donors. And many stories about that, how, you know, George Bush and Jerry Ford and Howard Baker and John Conley are getting the $1,000 donations, and Ronald Reagan fueled his campaign with $10, $25, $50 donors and changed America there. But we had no access to the microphone, so that's how the Heritage Foundation got started. That's how Leadership Institute, and goes on and on and on. The direct mail, and now we have, of course, the internet and phones and TV, and those are the new and alternative forms of media out there that just changed everything. Without the post office, without the new and alternative media, it probably wouldn't be a conservative movement worthy of the name.
And just to show, I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you have received or donated to a cause or candidate of your choice by direct mail? How many of you have? All right, and you mentioned earlier, Richard, it was an astonishing number to me that you would mail out a fundraising letter and get $2 or $3. Now you get it 60 cents on the dollar on average when you're prospecting, 60 to 80 cents. You're barely paying, you know, you're going to pay for the prospect. But it's fascinating to see, and as a recovering direct mail writer, I love receiving these fundraising solicitations because they tell a story.
Yep.
Because they do get around the microphone. They get around ABC, NBC, CBS, and tell me what is happening in Washington or what's happening in the state capitol. And it's truly unique. So, you know, you write about, and speaking about elections, you know, those of you who have donated to the candidate or cause of your choice through direct mail, you write about in Go Big nationalizing elections, in particular 2022, and as we look ahead in 2024. But for all my Virginia friends, 2023, Virginia is for lovers of elections. We have them every year. So you talk about how nationalizing elections and conservatives only when the campaigns are fought around conservative issues and principles. What are conservative opportunities as we head into 2023 and 2024?
Excellent question, Matthew. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. You asked earlier about stories. Let me just tell one quickly. National Right to Work Committee, Morton's on the board of directors of the organization, a great organization, a client of ours many years ago. In 1975, the left was running amok. They had Democrats had supermajorities, the House, Senate, etc. They would pass anything that the Democrats wanted just about, and they wanted to pass common situs legislation. Common situs says you got a construction project, 10 unions on that. One union goes on strike, everybody goes on strike. You would give them an enormous amount of power. Reed wanted to defeat the legislation. Jerry Ford said, put the legislation on my desk, I'll sign it. This is 1975. So Reed calls me, I come down to his office, we meet, and he wants to do 4 million letters, what we call a gut roll, no test, no nothing, just mail 4 million letters. So we could mail a letter in those days with our fees, everything, for 25 cents. So we mailed 4 million letters at a cost of $1 million. And a friend of mine worked in Jerry Ford's press office, and he said Ford, in the next few months, got 720,000 cards and letters saying veto the legislation. He broke his word to labor and vetoed the legislation, all because of those 4 million letters out there. And $700,000 came back. And I was regularly, almost weekly, attacked on NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., for just doing this, spending $1 million, bringing $700,000. But Reed went to his grave. I will go to my grave, not knowing how much money those 90,000 donors gave in the next 30, 40 years, but it was something north of $30 million for that 300. But the purpose of the mail was not to raise money and take out an ad in the New York Times, but to defeat the legislation. One, we achieved the objective, and you've got 90,000 donors, and I understood something early in those days, which is lifetime value of the donor, etc. Morton's can write a book about it. He knows it so well. Now, to get to your question about nationalizing the elections. Conservatives never win elections nationally unless they're nationalized around our issues. And I've been doing this a long time, of course, and I've never seen the issues line up so favorably for us as they were in 2022, and the Republicans blew it. We need a lot of things, and I could go on all morning long on this one thing that we need. Number one, above everything else, we needed it in 1961 when we went to New York. We need it today, leadership. We lack the leadership. For whatever reason, the good Lord has seemed to bless the left with far more leaders than we do. You must give the voters a tune to whistle. Reagan did that. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Former Governor George Allen here in Virginia. You do the crime, you do the time. That's a tune you can whistle. No car tax, Jim Gilmore. Glenn Youngkin, no CRT. And
Parents matter.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you whistle inflation? How do you whistle open borders, crime? Republicans, just nothing. Democrats brilliantly came up with 2 tunes for the voters to whistle in this last election. One, democracy is on the ballot, January 6th. Okay. Then the other one is a woman's right to choose is on the ballot. So from the Republicans, crickets, nothing. And so they went to the polls and with 2 tunes in their head, all favorable to the Democrats. Okay, and but that's always the way it is. It is always the way with the Republicans. If the elections are nationalized, it's because us conservatives nationalize them. It gets back to that leadership thing again. Leadership starts with each of us here, and so. If we're going to win in 2024, and we have to win in 2024, we have to nationalize the election around our issues. I've never seen the issues line up so favorable for us. We have an opportunity to brand the Democrats in such a way that they will be so toxic they won't be able to win elections for generations to come. If we conservatives, not the Republicans, they're not capable of doing this. The conservatives have to provide the leadership to take us into the future.
And you've mentioned, especially as we head into 2024, obviously, Leadership Institute is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We don't endorse candidates, political parties, or pending legislation. I'm not an attorney, and I don't play one on television. But Morton has seen the importance, especially of this thing that's happening in our schools today. And in fact, if you don't know, We now have a new vice president here at Leadership Institute, Bridget Ziegler, who has been on the staff for about a year, building out these school board trainings, and she's based in Sarasota. We've got now what I call Leadership Institute South. We've got some property down there, but it is so important to nationalize these issues. Most parents, and I see some Moms for Liberty in the crowd, most parents are not ideologues, except when they're, my sister is having a baby today. I think I'm going to fly home after this, but she's got a 9-year-old, and I said, well, what happens when Ariel comes home from school and she says she's Adam? And my sister, who is not especially political and not particularly tuned in to what's going on the news, she says, well, this is absolutely unacceptable. So now we have millions and millions of parents who are concerned about what's going on in our schools, and how do conservatives go big and go bold and talk about the issues, particularly to moms and dads across the country who are deathly afraid of what the guidance counselors and these non-binary 23-year-old, gender non-conforming kindergarten teachers are talking about children. What do we do, and how do we go big and go bold in that space, particularly as we head into 2024?
You correctly said, talked about the parents. That's a new Tea Party movement. We can govern America for a long period of time by bringing the parents, into the movement here. I wrote the book Go Big. Basically, from about the last 4 or 5 years, I've been every 5-6 weeks writing a memo to 8, 9, 10,000 conservative leaders nationally. If you're doing A, B, and C, stop doing it. If you're not doing X, Y, and Z, start doing it. And there's a little bit of growth. I see a lot of growth from my memos from Morton here, who reads them and passes them around to his team here. But that's not true of most of our people. Most of our people just are not doing what needs to be done. The left is outraising us 700%. More money from their nonprofits, from 700% more unique donors. It goes on, I can go on and on. But anyway, I wrote the book to try to encourage people at whatever level they want to participate to get involved. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, you can be effective. If you want to start a new organization, you want to run for office, you want to support an organization, you want to support a candidate, you can do that. In today's world, because of the internet, because of all the new technology out there, we have the ability, each and every one of us, to be a leader wherever we are. It's in our home, our community, our work, whatever. And so I encourage everybody to provide that leadership that you can. And I go into great detail about how you can be effective at any level. And we need that leadership from each of us. You talked about my organization, Fed Up PAC. We have something called the Paul Revere Writers there. Interesting, Paul Revere was alerting this countryside. By the way, I won't take time to say what he said, but he did not say the British are coming. The reason why? Your neighbors were all British. Everybody was British. The redcoats are coming. Everybody knew what a redcoat was. The regulars are coming. But anyway, we all need to be modern-day Paul Reveres, at the local level, state level, national level, wherever you find yourself, rush to the sound of the gun. Don't wait for orders from Morton or Glenn Youngkin or me or anybody else out there. The book explains how you can really be effective, and we need several million conservatives to grab the ball and run with it, because the Republican Party is not going to do it. It's going to come from us grassroots conservatives, and if we don't do it, it won't get done.
And even in a place like Arlington or the City of Falls Church or Fairfax or out in real Virginia, I'm not sure where that is, but because I've lived here in Arlington since 2009. But even here, where a majority of our friends and neighbors, again, 80% of my neighbors living and dead voted for Joe Biden in 2020, there's civic infrastructure where people are showing up. I was at the polls over here in Lyon Village in 2021. It's a neighborhood of single-family homes for now. And young parents in their early 30s with a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old in tow who would take the blue sample ballot, and then they would look at me, thumbs up, and say, "Parents matter." And so even in a place like Arlington, I tell people, I'm the kid in the room full of horse manure saying there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. What is your advice to, and we've got, and Kirsten Holmberg is around here somewhere, later, I think in June, we've got a conservative organizational entrepreneur program. This will be the third one Morton has written an essay. If you go to leadershiపింstitute.org, you can find it about how to start a conservative organization. And we have, we weaponize that into a 1.5 or 2 day training. It's absolutely excellent stuff with Kevin Gentry and Ed Corrigan and many others on how to start a conservative organization. But what is the advice that you would give individuals here who may work in the conservative movement, who may not, as we head into this long cycle, and what can we do to save the country from the redcoats?
Good. Well, the Go Big, by the way, comes from Kevin Gentry. As I'm writing the book, I'm looking for a title. I reviewed memos that I'd gotten from Kevin over the years, and from years and years ago, he said, if we want to go big in the next election, I said, that's it, go big. So again, the book goes into great detail, but the number of what you can do and how you can be effective. You start with energy. The left has so much energy you can cut with a knife almost. Not so on our side. I know most all the national conservative leaders. I'm in a meeting with 20 of them or so in New Orleans right before the pandemic, and I'm singing this song here, complaining about this, we're not doing this, we're getting beat here and there. And it's a household name, you'll all know him. He weighed in at the meeting and he agreed with me. He said he had done a list of 12 national conservatives that have high energy, couldn't go more than 12. I did my own list. I got to 9, 10, couldn't go to 12 yet. But this man right here, Morton, is on that list, and a few others, Tom Fitton. I'm really excited about the new president of Heritage, Kevin Roberts. I think he's going to be great. But so bring that energy to it and pick yourself, okay? Don't wait for anybody to come knock on your door. Donald Trump became president of the United States. Nobody beat a path to his door. Glenn Youngkin, he picked himself, okay? I'm just a kid. I come to Washington, 28, 29 years old, full of ideas, full of energy. Nobody invites me to anything. I'm helping run Young Americans for Freedom. I'm doing this and that. So finally, after much frustration, a few years go by, I called a meeting. Surprise, people came. And so then I called another meeting a few weeks later, and more people came, okay? And I learned something early on. You'd be surprised how many people will come and how many important people will come to your meetings if you do one thing. Serve good food, okay? Serve good food, they will come. Okay? But anyway, pick yourself and provide that leadership. Don't wait for anybody else. Call a meeting of 5 or 6 parents. You got a school board election coming up, and then it'll grow from there. But take that leadership. Run for office yourself, or support your neighbor who wants to run, But put that energy out there.
And that energy is so important. Again, I wake up and I say, I'm the kid in the room full of horse manure. There's got to be a pony in here somewhere. Even here in Arlington, Northern Virginia, if Glenn Youngkin can do it across Virginia and pick up 6,000 votes in Arlington and swing the needle, 6 or 7 points right here in a place where people are committed to the left's ideology of big government matters. Big government is the solution. There are so many opportunities. And even one of our partners is Moms for Liberty. I mentioned them earlier. Started in Florida, just by moms and dads who were concerned about what's going on in the schools. What, in addition to this, having the energy to go out and do it, and not to wait for, say, a partisan infrastructure, because, and I may be a leader in a certain partisan committee here locally. The committee can only do so much, and they are, just by the nature, they're passive in many instances. So out beyond your partisan committee, beyond those institutions that we all know, Heritage and Dr. Kevin Roberts and YAF even now, and FreedomWorks and others, what is the next step? So we have energy. People are excited. Are you guys excited in here? All right.
Good.
So there's a pulse out there, at least one. They're excited, and we have this concept called the human action model. There's this vision of a better state. We know what it looks like. We know what conservative principles enacted look like. And a sense of unease. We're all unsettled about something that's happening in the country, be it, heaven forbid, this Joe Biden situation in Washington across the river. But people need specific steps, because if it's overwhelming, the national debt is 31, 33, who knows, $1 trillion. It doesn't even matter anymore because we can't wrap our brains around it. So we have energy. What is the next step? And we're going to meetings. We do love meetings, right? Many of you are going to another meeting after this. But beyond the meetings, what is the next step? What can people do today to go out and fight for our conservative principles?
Let me just say that very few people decide to become Republicans. I didn't decide to become a Republican. I was an anti-communist, okay? And then that led me to, in 1964, Hillary Rodham is a Goldwater girl. In 4 or 5 years, she's a hardcore leftist, not having nothing to do with the DNC, having everything to do with one single issue organization, opposition to the Vietnam War. So most people, quite frankly, are normal. They're not like us.
Not like
Hillary.
Hillary.
Here's Wednesday morning, and we're at a political function, ideological function, and we'll go to Saturday night meetings. We'll travel around the country to do this or that type of thing. But that's not most people. Most people, though, they have their family, their job, their community, etc. But there is one issue. Sometimes two, maybe even three sometimes. Maybe it's the schools. Maybe it's overregulation of small business in their community. Maybe it's crime in their community that'll get them out on a Wednesday morning or Saturday evening and whatever. And so look for that issue that is in your community, your circle of influence. What's that one issue you think can bring other people together? You can call for a meeting and have coffee on Saturday morning and talk about how you grow your meeting. And the goal here is to do this. The goal is to, getting back to the four horsemen, is to brand the Democrats as out of step on crime, on taxes, on indoctrination of school children, whatever it might be. The law of the jungle is eat or be eaten. The law of politics is define or be defined. And the Democrats in the last election defined us on the women's right to choose, democracy, etc. And Republicans are not going to define the Democrats. It's going to be us conservatives. So call people together this weekend, next weekend, and have people over your house and talk about issues out there. And maybe somebody will decide to run for office from that group. Or you call a larger meeting, 20, 25, type of thing. But put that energy out there now. And as you go forward, identify that one issue or two issues, maybe it's a Second Amendment, whatever it might be, that you can rally people around who are not politically engaged, and they will become politically engaged.
Mr. Viggory, it has been an honor to have this conversation with you in front of our friends. Let's give Richard Viggory a round of applause, and we will entertain a couple of on-topic questions. I see Katie, and please wait for the microphone. We're our intern program, which I manage. Allie Lipinski is our intern coordinator. They start again in 2 weeks, about 12 days, and so we'll have intern runners soon. But so please wait. And I see Katie Gorka over here in the lovely glasses. She's got the first question.
Okay, since we've mentioned Moms for Liberty a few times, I'd love to look at this as a case study. So here's an organization that has very quickly gone to, I think, over 125,000 members. But they operate on a shoestring. There's a very high barrier to entry for direct mail, as you alluded to earlier. What do you advise an organization like this that doesn't have the big budget to start reaching out to their vast network and others to raise money?
What I do, quite frankly, is deviant behavior. Is deviant behavior to do what I do, and mail 1 million letters that cost $600,000-$700,000 and more now. So it's learned behavior. You have to get professionals involved at that level. If you're just in local community, the internet, you can start out there with the internet and just build organically from everybody's contact information that they have with their friends, neighbors, church members, etc. there. But the left has so much more professionalism in their fundraising than we do, quite frankly. I wouldn't dream of flying in an airplane with a pilot who had the skills of the average conservative marketer, quite frankly. I was with a lot of them last night in a conservative function. A lot of young people there in the internet, and they say, I ask them, how do you learn to do what you do, the internet, whatever it might be? Oh, just instinct, my gut, Would you go to a doctor who, learned the skills by the seat of his pants, his gut? So it's go to, there are good professionals out there, and go and talk to them. It's a very good organization, Moms for Liberty. We have a similar organization as a client, Moms for America. And they have a big, large file that we're developing for them. And you want to go to California in 5 hours, you're capable of doing that. But don't fly the plane yourself. Hire a professional. Go out there and talk to somebody. And, many, many people will be glad to sit there and spend an hour with you and talk to you and walk you through how to do this, and that.
Well, and to Katie's point,
It's going to be Morton School. He's got a school right here. My gosh, learn right here from the master.
There is, and one of the things that I found in a local partisan committee I may be affiliated with, one of the things that Donald Trump did really well was this low dollar donor engagement, $5, $10, $15 we've seen. And one of the things that I did on social media was there's a picture of, I think, Donald Trump walking off the stage at CPAC, and he's waving, so all 5 fingers are up in the air. And I used that photo, and we did $5 Friday posts where we would post on Facebook, $5 Friday, photo of Donald Trump with all 5 fingers in the air. And the local partisan committee raised $200 or $300 every Friday for 5, 6 subsequent Fridays. And it brought in people who were not otherwise members of the organization, who then, those low dollar donors will go out and do stuff for the organization. I see Jim Martin in the front. He's got a quick, so Kirsten, I think there's a question here, and Jim promises that it won't be a reintroduction of Richard on the stage here at this breakfast. Jim.
Let me make a comment
Oh, Jim.
about what we owe Richard Art Viguerie in this movement. Morton earlier named him the funding father. And some 40 years ago, I wrote an article in the Washington Times about the funding father, and I can almost quote the first paragraph verbatim. I said, before Rush Limbaugh, there was Richard Viguerie delivering the mail through the Himalayas. Well, after Rush Limbaugh, thank goodness, Richard Viguerie is still delivering the mail through the Himalayas. And because of that, organizations like the 60 Plus Association, which I run, thanks to Richard Viguerie, organizations like mine are up and fighting the fight every day. So thank you again, Richard.
Yeah.
Though it wasn't a
I'm
question,
not
Jim, I'm sure you have a response. Richard, go.
Well, I'm not sure how much credit you can give to Jim there. He and I have played thousands of rounds of golf together, and the vast majority of them, he beat the socks off of me. There would be, as Jim's saying, there would be no conservative movement. Not without me. That's not true. But it is true that there'd be no conservative movement without direct mail, without new and alternative media to allow us to bypass the media. And you talk about the small donors.
Yes, sir.
In Virginia here in 2019. For every donation the Republicans received, the Democrats got 15. And it looks like it's continuing on that way. It was even worse in 2017 when we lost the control of the legislature, except for a tie. You just need to, at the grassroots level, the state level, the national level, we've just got to take our game higher. We've got to get out there. The left is just running circles around us. In 2019, the Democrats had 276,000 donations for their candidates in Virginia. Republicans 19,000. It's not a fair fight.
And we have time for one more question, and I see it right over here. Take it, don't.
Dennis
It's a question,
Kirk with
right?
Dennis Kirk with Heritage Foundation. Unification is the question. We've got over 50 people in the Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Principles book, 887 pages, 30 chapters. How do we get more organizations to sign up? We still have the splintering of the various groups and interests. Leadership is in our coalition. We've got 50 great groups, but what we don't have is the Nancy Pelosi in lockstep Republicans instead of the Democrats.
And before, Richard, I let you, I want to say that if you're interested, Heritage Foundation has Project 2025. You can go to project2025.org and check it out. Really, the book that helped President Reagan in 1981. Heritage is leading the charge for the next conservative administration. There are dozens of conservative organizations who are at the table on this. Really great operation. Thank you for that question. So, Richard, as we think about the next conservative administration, how do we bring more conservatives to the table? Where oh goodness, Grover Norquist says this. The left is at the table and they're all gunning for the same resources, and conservatives and the right largely just want to be left alone. How do we engage them? Even, and I'm going to say intersectional is a word, but how do we engage them to bring them along as we head into this next critical fight?
Well, you start with what they've got. They've got a great leader there, in Dr. Kevin Roberts, and Kevin, I know, understands the biblical instructions of my people perish without a vision. And we've got to start with the vision out there. And he's bringing that energy out there, that leadership. And the Republicans are not going to do it. They're not going to save Western civilization. It's going to be us. By the way, Professor, I like to refer to him, Harry Jaffa, passed away a few years ago. Giant of a man, professor at Claremont Institute in California. And he said, Western civilization, this is so true. Listen now. Western civilization survives because of America. Then he said, America survives because of the conservative movement. I've added the conservative movement survives because of a few hundred of us.
No pressure.
No pressure, okay. So literally, your Western civilization doesn't depend upon the chairman of the Republican Party or the state or whatever. It's the people in this room and the people listening to us now and those of our friends out there that we work with. Western civilization depends on us out there. One last piece of advice, particularly for you young people. I am where I am. I've been able to achieve whatever I've been able to achieve because I was blessed to have 4 mentors, okay? 3 of them are deceased now. And seek out mentors. We're all turtles on a stump. Walk out in the country where I live, you see a stump and you see a turtle on it, you know something. Somebody came along and put that turtle up there, because the turtle didn't climb up that stump. And I'm a turtle, and I had 4 men who saw something in me, and so there. And look for and make yourself convincing to your potential mentor that it's worth their time. To invest in you, not because you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to go out there and save Western civilization. You're going to make this contribution to these people or this group or whatever. So seek mentors, and then and make sure you have a vision that you communicate to your potential mentor that justifies their time to invest in you.
That's so important, and it is great to see, as someone who came from outside Nashville, and I moved up here with the help of Morton and the Leadership Institute. There are so many opportunities, and especially for young people who are maybe in their 20s or early 30s, you can now be a mentor. And we're all rowing this boat in the same direction, generally speaking, and to have the hand up to bring you along is so important. Richard, it has been an honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate your time, and I know the folks here do. Thank you so much. And before we move, I'm not going to move the lectern back, but I think Morton, because he's mic'd up, he wants to come up, and I will slither away from the stage. But thank you, Richard, and if you'll stand up, and I think Morton will come up.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's always a thrill to be with Richard Viguerie. He hired me in 1972, and I worked for him for 7 years. Some people stayed there a long time. When I came there, my supervisor was Jim Martin, and he broke me into this business. And eventually, I had to present a copy of direct mail for a client, and I drafted it up, and boy, I was really confident of myself. Straight A's in English throughout all my education. Voluminous reader, literally thousands of books that I read, and I thought I was hot stuff. And I wrote a letter, a fundraising letter draft, and submitted it to Richard. I still carry a red pen. Richard edits with a red pen, and I got this draft back, and it was as if he had bled all over it. It was red here and red there, and then there was an arrow pointing to the text. Out in the margin he wrote, "This is the worst sentence I have ever seen." And it was true. I'm well read and have good English, but I didn't know how to communicate in a direct mail fundraising piece, and I learned that, and so it was a very exciting thing talking about those people that Richard talked about that we began to meet with in the early 1970s, and it did change the world. We got a lot to do. We're probably in as much danger in this country right now as we have ever been, maybe greater danger. And so it's important that we work to build the conservative movement. Now, Richard, I know that since Hillsdale is a really great client of yours, and I've noticed in some years, Richard is now wearing Hillsdale College ties.
And doesn't stand for Hillary.
He has a supply of Adam Smith ties as well, which we usually give to our speakers an Adam Smith tie or an Adam Smith ladies scarf. And so we do have a present, a little thank you gift there. And there, Richard, is a set of Leadership Institute mugs like the ones pictured here on the screens. And on the other side, all 4 mugs are different, are printed my 45 laws of the public policy process. And I don't think Richard has these mugs, and I'm happy to present it to you. Richard, it's wonderful to be with you. Well, I'm fortunate to be with Richard in meetings and plottings and schemes to this very day. And he is a great movement builder. There would not have been anything like the conservative movement today had he not pioneered it. And many things that you do can be counterproductive. Things that you think are absolutely wonderful can be counterproductive. And so things that are counterintuitive. Most people believe, if you polled the nation, that you ask them which would bring in greater number of responses and more money. Would it be a short letter or a very long letter? Most people would say, oh, a short letter. And that's not the truth. A good long letter will do better than a good short letter. And there's so many things that are not obvious on their face, but you learn by trial and error. You test and find out what works. You study under people who have learned by trial and error and get the benefit of their knowledge. And so it's a real honor for me to have Richard on the stage here at the Leadership Institute. Richard, thanks so much for coming.
Let me just say that over here is William Blackwell, Morton and Helen's son, and I've literally known him since almost the day he was born. He's the same age as my son, Ryan, and I see him in the office 20-something years ago. I said, William, what are you doing here? He says, oh, I work here. Oh, really? Tell me about it. And so he got the job at our company 20 years ago. Nobody knew who he was. So Helen and Morton are very proud of that, and we are thrilled with William. So he got the job without anybody knowing he was the son of Morton and Helen.
Neither Richard or I knew. And my son is very proud that he got the job without the people there knowing Richard's and my long involvement.
All right, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you,
my friend.
Okay, I invite you to join us here on June 7th, our next Wednesday called breakfast. I I encourage you to RSVP online at leadershipinstitute.org/breakfast. Andres Nava, will you come up here? Hi, Andres. I invite anyone interested in a tour of our Stephen P.J. Wood building here and our next door Emerson and Dolores Ranch Center for Campus Reform. Meet Andres here. He's with our Growth and Development Department. He will lead you a tour, take you on a great tour of our institute. He's ready to answer any questions that you might have. And if he can't answer some tough question that you ask, he'll pop up to my office and ask me. Thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate your support.